Okay. Namaste, welcome. Good to see you all. Today is the 13th session. Let's begin with the unity and togetherness student-teacher invocation. Inhale for Om. Sahana vavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu, ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The Patanjali invocation. Inhale for Om. Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakarotam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi abahu purushakaram shankachakra siddharinam sahasra shirasham shvetam pranimami patanjalim Srimate Anantaya Nagaraja Namo Namaha Namo Namaha Namo Namaha Om. Okay, starting chapter 3. Chapter 3, Vibhutipada, Vibhutipada. Vibhuti means extraordinary existence or extraordinary achievements or accomplishments. They say this is the chapter on superpowers. And I know a lot of people, when they hear the word supernatural, it's science fiction, like right off the bat. But I think all he's saying is that you become more than ordinary. You know, imagine if you're used to living in a two-dimensional world where you can only go forward and back, right and left. You live on the sort of on the flat surface of the planet. And next thing you know, there's another person who's able to fly, for example. They can experience the third dimension upward. And I don't know. I think it's pretty reasonable, some of the stuff they say, but at the same time, some of it I don't understand. So we'll go through the ones that I do understand, and I might mention one or two that I don't understand from experience. I can understand it in writing, but it doesn't make sense. Does that make sense? So they say this chapter is the one on siddhis or accomplishments or superpowers or achievements, perfections. It also means perfection. At the end of chapter 2, he did talk about some of that stuff, right? Do you guys remember that? At the end of chapter 2, he was like, well, if you If you become a master of satya, you become a master of satyam, 100% moment by moment, you're always truthful. Um, and you get the power of being able to say whatever you want and it comes true. Remember that? Did they cover that? Yes, yes. Okay. So here he continues on. So let's see what he has to say. Um, this chapter essentially presents the internal practices. The condition of the mind at this point, it's able to concentrate. The asanas, you're able to sit. Now you're able to breathe, and you can go inside without your senses distracting you all the time, like what you hear, what like you're sitting there in meditation and your phone goes off, for example, ding ding, and you're like, oh, it takes you have to go check your phone. You can't stay in meditation, that sort of thing, right? But at this point, you're conditioned to concentrate, you're conditioned to sit, you're able to remove disturbances. So the first sutra, he says, Desha Bandha Chittasya Dharana. Desha Bandha. Desha means a location, a place. Bandha means to bind. Bandha means to bind. Chittasya, referring to the mind or the chitta. Dharana. Dharana is the name of the practice. So what does it mean? Dharana is tying the mind to a particular spot, either inside the body, like for example, the space between the brows, the throat chakra, etc., right? They're usually locations in the body. You probably heard me do the meditation where you bring your awareness to the tip of your nose. That one, that's a location, right? So this is, and it could also be outside the body. For example, an image. A lot of times the sadhaki or the yoga abhyasi, the yoga practitioner, would carry a picture of their guru or their deity, and then they'd place an altar and they would stare at it. Then they would close their eyes and try to keep their minds attached to that object. Does that make sense? Um, it's like kind of like similar to what I guess maybe the Catholics or the Christians, they have the big Jesus on the cross and you stare at it long enough, right? And then you become one with it. Similar sort of idea, except this is, I don't know Catholicism, their practices, but I see people praying and staring at an icon, literally. So it could even be like a star, like at nighttime you meditate on a particular star, or the moon. Dharana is kind of like, at this stage, dharana is kind of like a dripping faucet. You ever play with a faucet? You open up the water and it starts to drip, and you keep opening it, and then eventually it becomes a stream, like an unbroken stream. And then you turn it down a little bit until it starts dripping again. So when it drips, you're in dharana. Your attention, because it's broken, right? Your attention is on an object, but then it's broken. Then you come back to it. You stay with it for a little while, then it breaks, and then you keep pulling it back. By pulling it back, you're practicing dharana. So it's not you haven't reached samadhi yet at this stage. Um, This is where most people get stuck. Dharana. Because it takes a big commitment to transform the mind from this stage to the next stage, which he'll talk about in a minute. This is what the yogis called yogic meditation. All other meditations, well, let's call this self-guided meditation, right? Self-guided. But guided meditations are good. They can be calming and relaxing. But ultimately, the yogis say that the guided meditations will not set you free. Once the meditation begins, the guru or the teacher, the guide, stays outside, and there shouldn't be any interference. Does that make sense? So the teacher sets the student up and then leaves. You cannot keep talking and drawing them out through the senses. Okay, number 2. Here he's talking about the second stage, dhyana. Tatra pratyaya ekatanata ekatan ata dhyanam. Ekanat. Eka is one. So tatra is of the same spot or object. We keep our attention on it. Our chitta vritti, all of our faculties move towards it. And then there's only one remaining. So moment after moment, you stay with the object as if the water is now oil. So if you ever pour oil, it never breaks, right? So this is now your mind is like oil. You can pour it and it will just constantly, steadily be on an object. This is called dhyana. This is the 7th limb of Ashtanga Yoga. Meditation. This is meditation. Yogic meditation. Remember I said one thought or no thoughts? Dhyana here is one thought. You're able to keep one thought. Only one. One, 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 one. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Just staying with the 1, 1, 1, 1. Staying 1. Mantra meditations make it easier. But I remember when I first did mantra meditation, even though I was chanting the mantra in my mind, it would somehow forget about it and go somewhere else. I'm like, what? I was doing mantra, going back doing the mantra. Like it's so powerful what the mind can do. You feel like you have no control sometimes, right? Do the mantra, and just hang on. How did I end up thinking about whatever it was I'm thinking about? But it does change. It does change. You have to really mind everything. You have to mind your sleep. You have to mind your water, your fluid intake. You have to mind your sattvic diet. Not too much, just enough. Right time, blah, blah, blah. Right season. But you mind it for a few weeks, you'll start to see some amazing results. Just a few weeks. But it takes everything. It takes lifestyle. I mean, if you're on a particular schedule that's not helping, you got to be able to step away. You really have to be free from obligations. That's why living a monastic life is the way to do it, right? So you're living really simply. Meals are provided. I mean, someone makes it, right? But so you go to a retreat, similar. If you go to a retreat, you don't have to do anything. What if we had something like that around here? Be amazing. Okay, moving on. Third sutra. He's talking about samadhi. He mentions the whole chapter. The first chapter was on samadhi. Here he mentions what is exactly samadhi. In the earlier chapter, or in the second sutra, Patanjali says yoga's chitta vritti nirodha, basically saying this is samadhi. Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Now let's see what he says. Tateva, of the same place or object, or with as if previously, whatever object you're meditating on. Artha matra, artha being the object, matra being alone. Nirbhasham, Nirbhasham is kind of like that word near. We see that, and where do we see that word near? N-I-R. In Buddhism, nirvana. Nirvana and samadhi are like the same thing. They just have different names for it. In Buddhism, they call it nirvana. In yoga, we call it samadhi. In Vedanta, they call it moksha, which is a liberation, it's all similar, right? This is a mental state. The other one is also a mental state. You just get there different ways to the top of the mountain. Nirbhasham, completely, fully seen, absolutely bright and clear, shining completely within one's chitta, right? It's so obvious. It's right there in your face, but in your mind's face, right? It's like right there, so big, so bright, completely full. It's like as if you were right up close to the full moon. You're like, it was in your face, right? Okay. And Svarupa, he mentioned that in the first chapter as well. Svarupa, one's true form. Here it's more like the feeling that I'm witnessing, if that makes any sense. The feeling that you're witnessing. Like, what is Svarupa? What is your own form? Your own form is the seer, the witness, right? That's who you are. You're the witness. And now you're having an experience where you're observing. And you see everything clearly. That object alone shines brightly within your realm of awareness. Yet, the feeling that you are witnessing is shunyam, or shunyo. What is shunyo? Shunyo means void, without. So the object shines bright, but you don't feel like you're looking at it anymore. So you step into the object, and that you are basically the object. Right? Let's say I was meditating on the moon. It's unbroken concentration. And then the moon gets so big as I approach it, and it gets closer and closer and closer to me. And the moon occupies my entire mental space, my chitta vritti. Right? Does that make sense? So I don't feel the separation, the duality anymore. The duality, what is duality? Subject, object. The moon is the object. I'm the subject. I'm witnessing it. And it becomes so big in my awareness that there's nothing else. There's just one. And then I disappear. That feeling that I exist goes away. That is samadhi. Samadhi is when the object alone shines clearly in the mind as if the observer appears to be absent. How does your book describe it? I'm sorry. Is anyone looking at another book? I got the groups mixed up. I have another group that doesn't have a copy, and they have the Swami. So let's see what Swami Satchitananda says. I like Swami Satchitananda, but sometimes his English is really intense. This is 3:3. 2. Book 3. Okay, samadhi is the same meditation. This is what he says. Samadhi is the same meditation when there's the shining of the object alone, as if devoid of form. That's different. It's similar, but it's different. As if devoid of form. What's devoid of form? Me or the object? You see? Not very clear, is it?
His commentary is even more funny. There is not much I can say about this one. And then he goes on for a page and a half.
A long time.
I can't say much, but here we go. You'll easily understand when you have a little experience. Meditation culminates at the state of samadhi. Okay, anyways, right. So what did you go ahead.
You want Crenshaw?
Yeah, what did he say? Sorry, stop texting people.
Samadhi is when you have perfected meditation, the self has emptied, and the true essence of your being is all that remains.
Say that again.
Samadhi is when you have perfected meditation, the self has emptied, and the true essence of your being is all that remains.
Okay. He has that now. He's saying it kind of backwards. He's saying that the self remains. That's the next level samadhi. This is entry level with an object. There's an object less. Hey, I'm sorry. Hey, there's someone here at the door. Hang on. Pardon me. One minute, you guys. Sorry. Did you eat your food? Okay, sorry guys. Okay. All right, Paul, one more time. So he says that the self remains.
The self has emptied, and the true essence of your being is all that remains.
Yeah, that's not right. Yeah, he's saying that's that the observer remains, but the object is gone. That's what I'm hearing. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's incorrect. Samadhi is when the object alone shines clearly in mind as if the observer is absent. Okay, and so moving on. Fourth one. So now that you've developed this capacity to concentrate and merge with an object, you can now use that capacity to do different things. So Ramaswamy said that samadhi is a skill as well as a state. Samadhi is a skill as well as a state. A lot of times people talk about samadhi and they talk about the state of enlightenment. I'm going to reach this state. You know, at some point, I'm going to keep practicing yoga. I'm going to reach this state. If I can do headstand long enough, I'll reach this state. What is this? So they don't know what they're searching for. But they have an idea. There is a way of being or experiencing the world, but it's also a skill. if someone has reached this state, they have now the skill to concentrate on any object, and we call that samyama. Excuse me. Star, can you bring me a water, please? Samyama. So here he says, whenever that object, trayam, the three, what are the three? The three steps, the dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. When those things become one step, you've got samyama. For example, I do some asanas, I do some pranayama, I go inside, I do pratyahara somehow, either Shanmukhi Mudra or, thank you, baby, Shanmukhi Mudra or Shavasana, right? Or Yoga Nidra works as well. And then I come out, and I don't need to do dharana or try to go into dhyana. I can just go straight into samadhi because all of those steps happen at once, right? I might chant Om one time. Om. Chant one mantra. And that puts me right into samadhi. Or I'm sorry, it doesn't put, I've never experienced that. I've never been able to go Om and go into samadhi, but I have been able to say Om, chant Om one time, and then not have any thoughts. So that's kind of like the first two, right? Dharana and dhyana. So I go right into dhyana, one chant. I sit there for a while, and when it happens, I don't know how many minutes pass because you don't have a concept of time and space anymore. You've transcended time and space. You're existing in this quantum realm, having this experience. And at some point, you kind of drop out. Experiences in the real world that I can sort of correlate or compare to it is one day I was at Lake Lavon, I think, and I did the parasailing or parachuting where the boat pulls you, whatever. So as I was going up, it was loud. You can hear the wind. You can hear the traffic. Has anyone done this before? At some point, it gets really quiet. And you can just see everything. It's just quiet. But you can't hear anything. I couldn't hear any traffic. Couldn't hear any of the wind on the water. None of that. Just quiet. Peaceful. No worries. I didn't even think about, what could happen if I was just like, wow, it's like deep meditation. I can see my thoughts, but they're so far away. If it happens, right, I can see it, but there's no interaction between me and the thoughts. Just quiet. And then when there are no thoughts, it's imagine that you don't see anything. There's nothing to see. No, the colors. I remember when I first started meditating, I used to see colors and flashes and patterns. And the more I kept my eyes closed, the more the patterns started, it was just like psychedelic. And that stopped. So samyama is whenever you can basically go into that concentrated state where you forget who you are. By the mastery of samyama, yogic awareness of all objects in the world results. So now, there's, remember the different types of understanding from the first chapter? I can understand by reading about it. I can understand by hearing about it. I can understand something by inferring about it, but everything is secondhand knowledge. Yogic understanding means having a direct experience with an object over an extended period of time without interruption. Then you develop a yogic understanding around a particular subject or object. So here, what he's referring to in the entire world, the entire universe, he's talking about the 24 tattvas. Remember from Sankhya? It's like, by the mastery of samyama, yogic awareness on the 24 tattvas results. So Ramaswamy keeps saying that if you want to really understand yoga, you have to also study Sankhya. What are the 24 tattvas? Do you guys remember? Let me do a screen share and see. Okay. The 24 tattvas are this is AI. Let's see if it's right. The 24 tattvas of the principles of creation in Sankhya philosophy are Prakriti being the nature, the material universe, the energetic universe, including our minds. Or sorry, Mahat, the great principle. The great principle. It's like the original soul. Buddhi, discriminating. This is intellect. This is part of this is the power to reason, the intelligence of man. That's also present in some animals that we've seen, right? Ahankara, the ego, the doer. Ahankara means doer, actually. The one who does, the one who acts. So it's the actor. We can call it the ego. Manas is a coordinator. He says the physical mind here, the brain. Manas means mind, but this mind is the coordinator of the senses. It's not the intellect. Intellect is higher mind. The five pancha indriyas, or the pancha indriyas, jnana. It's the pancha jnana indriyas. So he got this wrong. He, she, whatever. They. What do you call AI? AI. The five pancha indriyas, the sense organs, so five, and five karma indriyas, organs of action, arms, legs, tongue, because it's speech, right? That's sort of an action. Reproductive organs and digestive, eliminating organs. So there's five there. So if you add it all up, you got 5, 10. Yeah, there's some more. So there's 5 bhutis. The bhutis. What are the bhutis? The bhutis are the elements. You've got earth, water, fire, air, and ether. That's part of it. This is listed in Sankhya. And then you have so you have the sense organs, and you have what they do. So ears, hearing, eyes, seeing. Right? Does that make sense? Tongue, tasting. So then you have, that's 5. And then there's another list of 5. Is that right? 5, 10, 15, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Right. Anyway, here, let's take a look. They have diagrams all over. But you take your capacity to concentrate, and then you meditate, concentrate, and understand all these things. This doesn't look like it. But Sankhya, no, that's not it either. See, images, 24 tattvas. Okay, here we go. So there's 24 tattvas, and then there's the 25th. So there's Purusha. This is it right here. Okay, here it is. Purusha. Purusha is the 25th principle. At creation, you have Mula Prakriti, the root universe. They say that the three gunas are in a state of balance at this point. Mula Prakriti. This is sort of like before the Big Bang, if you will. Everything's in a state of equilibrium. Everything's in a state of balance. There's no dance happening at this point. This is like, there's absolutely nothing going on. It's absolute stillness. Then something happens, and from here, intellect is sprung. Intellect. This is creation. Intellect happens. From intellect, ahamkara, the ego, or we'll call it the doer, the actor. They call it the actor. But you can think of this, I think of it as like sort of like, like a chip off the old block, right? It's kind of like a drop of water separating from a big pool of water, or like a puddle of mercury and a little droplet of mercury pops off. And so it's like the cell membrane. Dang, I just touched my eyes and I think I had my hands on jalapenos and my eye is like on fire. Okay. Sorry you guys. But it's kind of, but I think of like a cell. So the cell membrane is that our ego. It's like that which creates separation from source. It's that which gives myself identity. Like, where do I begin? Like this entity of me, my swarupe, my personal form. Where does it end? Does it end where my skin ends? Does it end like when I put on clothes? Now, do I end where my clothes end? Am I, this being with clothing? So, like, how far in can I go and find out where I end, or my ego, and then where the real me is? And so I feel like, does that make sense, you guys? I feel like the ego creates this sort of identity, this individual. And this is, they call it ego, but ahamkara. But this identity is also an actor. It's like this, it has all its own karma, its own bundle of karma that it carries. It has its own memories and its own experience. And it is separate, its experience is separate from all the other drops or entities or souls or spirits. Make sense? And so at this point, we start having an individual experience. Now from here, the ahamkara, the ego, goes through the gunas. So here you have sattva, and here you actually have rajas. This thing is weird. I don't know why that's there. And then tamas. So this ego, on the sattvic side of things, it creates the organs, the 5 sense organs: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and it's got the organs of action, which are hands, feet, speech, elimination, procreation. And this mind controls these things. The mind controls this. On the tamasic side of things, you got what they call it, I guess, subtle senses, the tanmatras, which is sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. And that links with the mahabhutas, which are the elements. Bhutas are elements, which is space, akash. Akash means space, air, vayu, fire, agni, water, apa, earth, prithvi. So, does this look familiar? This is Ayurveda. This is Ayurveda. Ayurveda came from Sankhya. Ayurveda and yoga came from Sankhya. And so if you study Sankhya, yoga and Ayurveda make a whole lot of sense. A whole lot of sense. One eye blind. It's gonna be a funny recording. It's like on fire if I open it. So anyways, this is Sankhya. Okay? Om Namah Shivaya. Okay, later, dude. So yeah, so back to 3-5. The mastery of samyama, by the mastery of samadhi, you get samyama. With samyama, you get yogic awareness of all those things. That's why you use the skill to elevate your understanding. Swami Rama, he said in one of his books, it was brilliant, and I stole it. A mind unfit to concentrate is unfit for any path. And especially this path, you gotta wrangle your mind under your control. That's why they call it Raja Yoga, which is the highest yoga. Raja Yoga referring to king or royalty. This is the royal path. This is Raja Yoga. Okay, 3.6. Tasya Bhumishu Viniyoga. So I don't know if you've heard of this form of yoga called Viniyoga. Krishnamacharya calls his yoga Viniyoga or Vinyasa Krama. Viniyoga is individualized. Viniyoga means utilization. Means utilization. Like, how is it used? So now he's telling you that you use it differently. You use your samyama, this power, to concentrate differently. But ultimately, you're going from gross to subtle. You're going from external, large, tangible, whatever objects to something small and subtle and inside and small. That makes sense? Like the feeling that I exist, sort of things, like meditating on the feeling that I exist so that you can understand what is I, who am I, who is this I? Seven, Trayam, again, three, like Trayam become Trayam. What is it? What is Trayam? Trayam refers to Samyama again. We're still on the subject of Samyama. But he likes to mix it up and confuse us. He's still talking about Samyama here. Antarangam. Antaranga means internal. Purve bhaya is compared to the earlier. Purva means previously. He's saying that samyama is internal compared to the previous limbs. Such as yama, niyama, asana, and pranayama, and pratyahara, the first five. So even samyama, I'm just going to start going quickly through it. Even samyama is considered external in the state of nirbija, to the state of nirbija. Now he's saying, okay, there's a different type of samadhi beyond the samadhi that I've been talking about. This samadhi is without seed. Bij means seed, like Bij mantra. You heard of Bij mantra? Bij mantra? Lam, vam, hum, something like that. Those are Bij mantras for each chakra. Bij means seed. So nirbij means without seed, without an anchor. Now he's saying that even samyama now is considered inferior compared to this other samadhi without a seed. There are two tendencies of the mind. One is the outgoing tendency. For example, I'm interested in accomplishments, right? This outgoing tendency. I'm interested in achieving whatever posture. I want to be rich. I want to be, whatever it is. I want to be able to fly. I hear about these yogic powers. I want to be able to understand everyone's mind. I want to. Then there's this other state, this other tendency is this tendency to go inward. And the state of nirodha, or stopping the mind, weakens this outward tendency. You see? Does that make sense? when you achieve a state of samadhi, the outward going, the tendencies to achieve more in the material world start to decrease. And if you continue to practice it, ultimately you'll get into a state of nirodha for a long period of time. And when this is maintained moment after moment, the transformation of the mind is called nirodha parinama. Nirodha parinama. This is the first transformation. This is the first transformation. Nirodha parinama. Parinama means transformations. So now he's going to talk about different transformations of the mind. When the mind or the chitta is transformed to nirodha, due to its full of samskaras of nirodha, there is a continuous flow of peace. So in other words, what happens as a result of nirodha parinama? A steady flow of peace. This is the state that they talk about. The state of samadhi is the first transformation. The second transformation is called samadhi parinama. And this is actually a lower form, which is interesting. Usually, no, they don't. Sometimes he lists them from whatever. I would imagine he would list the second one first, but he listed the first one first. And the second one is samadhi, which is an inferior one. The inferior one is, in other words, here he says, let's see, all multifaceted, all the others, sarva is all the other ones, all the multitasking, multifaceted goals, they diminish. It's just saying the same thing. This happens when you reach samadhi transformation, which is inferior to the previous one. But the good thing here is that you can do samyama on any object. Like, for example, someone who's got this capacity can memorize a song instantly because they can just concentrate on it. They can memorize any song, any melody. They have this attunement. There are some people with that natural born skill, right? What do they call it? Pitch perfect or something? They can hear, they can sing, or maybe they can sing it. I don't know. Some people can play it. I don't know if he's mentioned it here yet. He might mention it in the future, but he's like, you can learn any animal language with the power of samyama. So any human language you can learn pretty quickly, but you can also learn languages of animals, speak to animals, because you pay attention. You can pay attention. Like I think Jane Goodall learned to speak to the monkeys, the chimpanzees, right? Or was it chimpanzees? It was chimps, wasn't it? You guys know the Jane Goodall story? She still tours around the world. I think these days, if not in the past few years, and she would open up by speaking monkey. And she was like, that's actually, what I'm saying is this, blah, 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 blah. So I don't see why this is not valid. Some of these things are it makes sense. Makes sense to me. Third transformation. So he's just going down. He's going from the top, nirodha, samadhi, ekagrata, pranayama, which is one pointedness. This is even inferior to the previous. Okay, so wow, that was weird. Okay, so let's just let's see here. Let's go on to Okay, they're all good. Go to 15. Here he mentions the word krama. Remember my studio? Krama Yoga Center? Krama. Krama anivatvam parinama anyatve hetu. Hetu means cause. So cause. Krama comes from the word karma, which is cause and effect, right? So this is a sutra on karma and krama. He's like, if you want a different transformation to take place, then you just need to change the sequence in what you're doing. You change the order or the sequence or the progression, then you get a new result, right? If you keep doing the same things, you're gonna keep getting the same things. So it's really simple. If you want a different power or different accomplishment or perfection, you do something different. It doesn't tell you what. That's up to the guru, right? This book was not meant for students. It's meant for teachers to use to teach students. Remember I said that in the very beginning? So he doesn't give the details necessarily for some of these things. He just says what's possible, and then it's up to the guru. Okay, so 16 here. 16 is where the siddhis begin. This is going to be interesting. We can just go through a few. By yogic contemplation on the three types of transformation, the past and the future of the object is known. So what are the three types of transformation? The first type of transformation is called dharma. I skipped the sutras earlier. It's from 13. So dharma is due to samskaras and practices, like your actual work. So those are the transformations. There's another change that happens over time. Everything changes over time, right? So that's something that's beyond our control. So as an object moves through time, it changes. And then avasta is a third type, and avasta means circumstances, right? So it's like something happened to me, made me change, like maybe a calamity or something like that. Does that make sense? It says here samskaras and habits, and Ramaswamy said that's not right. In our book, it says samskaras and habits. I put a red line through it, and I wrote circumstance and state. Okay, and then moving on to the next one. This is one that I put a question mark next to. 14, the arising of one dharma, or the characteristic of an object, and the dying of another dharma must coexist inherently within a dharmi. A dharmi is a person who lives a dharmic life. Both meanness and generosity are inherent within me, right? They're opposites. These are my dharmas. They won't manifest together at the same time. The mind can be ekagrata, one-pointed or distracted. Both capabilities are within me. Okay, so yeah, it's kind of like, with the niyamas, or the yamas and niyamas. The yamas say, don't hurt others. So if you have a violent thought or tendency to hit or push or hurt somebody, what do? Pratipaksha bhavanam. Remember that? Pratipaksha bhavanam. Think of the opposite. So it's similar to that these qualities are both inherent within me, and that one, you can't have, while they're inherent, one doesn't exist at the same time another one does. You can't be mean and generous at the same time, or I was going to say you can't be happy and sad at the same time, but I have. And it's the funniest. I've seen people, they're crying, but they're like upset, but then they're happy, and then they're upset, and Has that ever happened to you? I feel like it's like wild and crazy. Like, what's going on? I'm mad. I'm so mad. But I'm so happy. I don't really understand. So I think some people call that bipolar. Oh, I can open my eye now. Okay. Right. So let's see. Let's just go on. There's I remember him talking about the mother of all cities. The mother of all cities, like the Moab, the mother of all bombs. The mother of I like tell me what is the mother of all cities? Okay, by yogic contemplation on habits and tendencies of others. This is interesting. Because yoga is a study of oneself. Why would you want to study others? But here he says, by contemplating the habits and tendencies of others, one gets the knowledge of their previous births. And I was like, okay, you got to explain this one to me, please, Ramaswamy Ji. It's like you can see, sometimes you ever heard of like a human behaving like an animal? You hear that sometimes, right? Oh, they're behaving like a dog. Literally, right? And then you can see, oh, that person's behaving like a cat or behaving like whatever. And because I remember after studying this, I would meditate on my patio, and behind the patio was a big weeping willow that like went onto the patio. And there was a creek there, so there was a lot of wildlife. There's squirrels, armadillos, rabbits, possums, raccoons, ducks, fish. I mean, you name it, because it was on a golf course. That was the house before this, and I would sit there and watch these animals, and all the animals acted a little differently, right? Like you have temperament. These sparrows were sort of easygoing and looks like they wouldn't hurt a fly. And then you have the blue jays, and they're greedy. They're so greedy. They will I'm like, you're taking more than you need. I would put food out there, and they would I put almonds for the squirrels, and they stole the almonds. They'd come, and they can fill their pouches like rodents, and they fly off, and then no one fly. And I'm like, man, where are you taking all these? Anyways, you're taking all the almonds for the squirrels. Anyways, so I'm like, there are some people that act like that. Very greedy. Like maybe that bird was a human at one point. Or maybe the bird was a human, or the human was a bird. Which way does it go? But I don't know. That was an example he gave. The next one, 19, by looking at the manifestation of thoughts, like body gesture, body language, that the other minds or current thoughts will be understood. Now, this is interesting because they talk about mind reading, but the next sutra, he says, however, it does not reveal the cause of the thoughts, because the cause is not under investigation. So in other words, if I see someone crossing their arms like this, I can assume that their thoughts are probably not open and accepting. That's all he's saying. Now he's saying that you can't know why he's like this, why he's got his arms crossed. Makes sense. But remember, this is like a 2,500-year-old book, right? They probably weren't as advanced, or maybe they were more advanced. Heck, I don't know. By carefully doing samyama on one's own body and form, the yogi is able to stop the observing or seeing power of another person. Okay, so here, this is making one disappear. It's like magic. It's like sleight of hand or something. He's talking about magic. A lot of books might take this very literally, but Ramaswamy says the yogi doesn't disappear, the yogi appears to disappear. Make sense? Let's demystify some of this stuff. 22. And remember I talked about I talked about the Noah, the actor, the kid. That was like, I said he was a natural born yogi. He was a kid. He wanted to do karate, and he became this karate star over down the street at this karate studio next to my old studio. And then because he was so good with the staff, they wanted and this movie producer M. Night Shyamalan, I don't know how to say his last name, but he was auditioning for a Karate Kid, and Noah went in, did his thing, and then read some lines, and he got the starring role of the Last Airbender. Remember that movie, The Last Airbender? Avatar? Is it Avatar? Not Avatar. It was The Last Airbender. It was like a bald kid with an arrow on his head, and it was a from a comic or like an anime. Anyways, he started doing other movies, Space Cowboy, with I can't remember who it was, but anyways, then he decides he's like, I'm gonna do magic, and he became a magician. So like within the span of like 5 years, he like mastered karate, acting, and magic. I'm like, that dude is a natural born yogi. Whatever he puts his mind to, he can do. Like sleight of hand, making, you know. So which is really interesting, all the different things they talk about in this later chapter. By studying the flow of karma, or by studying the bad omens, one will be able to predict one's own death or another's death. Where did we see this? Some of you guys that were in the training with it, we saw that movie with Awake, with what's his name? Paramahansa Yogananda. Hi, Paramahansa Yogananda. We'll sing. Sing with me. Remember that? He predicted his own death. Remember that? He's like, I'm gonna die today, and then he gave his speech and fell over. My other friend, yeah, Paramahansa was my friend. My friend, Gangapuri in India, his dad was a yogi, and he also predicted his death. He went around, told people he was dying today. He's, I'm leaving my body. He was healthy. No one believed him. He was crying, and then after he said goodbye to everybody, he sat down with his with Ganga's mom, right? And they took like 4 breaths together, 3 or 4 breaths. They sat in meditation, leaned into each other, took 3 or 4 breaths, and then he stopped breathing. He left his body in the lotus pose, or meditation pose. And that's a true story based on what Gangapuri told me. His dad left like that. So you can know, or you can do it consciously. By contemplating on the qualities of Maitri, or friendliness, the others, the 4, remember the 4, Maitri, Karuna, the yogi attains enormous mental strength. So remember the 33rd Sutra, Maitri, Karuna, friendliness, compassion, Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, vicarious joy or pride, and indifference or non-judgment towards the 4 objects. You guys remember that one? 33rd Sutra. He was like, by contemplating the qualities of those, so now you've got samadhi, go back, understand these qualities, and you will attain enormous mental strength. Interesting. By yoga contemplation on the strength of an elephant, that the yogi will become strong like the elephant. This is sort of like Kung Fu. You see these Kung Fu guys, they would study these animals and they would start to move like them and fight like them, like mantis style, monkey style, tiger style, you know. And in yoga postures, they imitate them. You want to be light like a bird, practice crow. You want to be bendy like a wheel, practice wheel, or whatever. You want to stand firm like a tree, stand like a tree. And your leg will get firm, your hip will get strong, right? So it's like yoga asana practice. By yoga contemplation on pravriti, breath or light outside the heart or the head, breath or the light inside the heart, the yogi is able to get the knowledge of objects which are very fine and subtle. This is like remote viewing. Like you ever heard of the CIA and Russia doing this during the Cold War? They were experimenting with LSD and psychedelic, and then they were also trying to do remote viewing, like trying to spy remotely. You know what I'm talking about? This is the yogis talk about this. To leave your body and remotely view. Yogic contemplation on the sun results in knowledge of the universe. Yogic contemplation on the moon, you'll see the movements of the stars. You'll start to see constellations. Somebody had to discover them, right? Someone who stared at it for a long time. Yogic contemplation on the North Star leads to the knowledge of the movement of the constellations. So a little bit of astronomy in here. The North Star doesn't move, right? Everything else moves around the North Star. That's why it's the North Star. And so by contemplating on the North Star, you get to see everything else move. You remember the time-lapse images of the stars? Imagine there's no technology, but you're able to see that. It's wild. By yoga contemplation on the navel, Nabi chakra, the knowledge about the arrangement of one's organs, so you get better understanding of your body. By yoga contemplation on the pit of the throat or the neck, hunger and thirst are overcome. Where do you practice this? Ujjayi breathing. We tell students this. You won't get thirsty if you do Ujjayi breathing in class, right? If you're doing the mouth breathing, you're going to get thirsty. Jalandhar Bandha. By focusing on the Kurma nadi, so down through the throat, you got the bronchial tubes. That's the Kurma nadi. Kurma means tortoise. I don't know why they call it tortoise, but it's the Kurma nadi. Steadiness of mind and body is achieved. So this is also Ujjayi. Both of these support Ujjayi. 330 and 331. Krishnamacharya really loved the sutra, apparently. By yoga contemplation on the light inside the head, perception of cities takes place. All right, so we're at 809. You can go through here and read it yourself. I don't think the cities are that important. They are a distraction. So he keeps on going. There's so many cities. 37. 37 is an important one. Let's take a look at this. For those interested in the ultimate samadhi, Kaivalya or Nirodha, these cities mentioned earlier are the impediments, obstacles. Even though for a distracted mind, they are yogic accomplishments, right? Even so, they are distractions. So this is the end here. So this next segment is important. 38, by weakening the cause of bondage and by understanding the nature and the function of the mind, which goes out through the nadis, one is able to transfer and enter into another person's body, like a person or animal. This happens by the correct understanding of the cause of bondage and the understanding of the outward movement of the mind. So I had a talk with Paul recently, and we're talking about like yoga. A lot of us think that yoga is union. While that is one definition of it, this book is about the yoga of disassociation. You have to disassociate. You have to remove yourself from things to connect, right? So like, I have to free myself from my own body. In order to if you have the supreme power to disassociate yourself from your body, you can travel wherever you want to. But we are all bound in this body, right? I go to sleep in this body, I wake up in this body. I go to sleep in this body, I wake up in I'm bound. Banda, I'm bound. Like a cucumber to a vine, bound. Freedom takes place when I'm unbound. That's freedom. Kaivalya means alone. I'm no longer bound. And if you have the power to dissociate, to unbind yourself, then you'll know who you are, one, but then you can also remove yourself from your own body in order to enter another. You have to understand what binds you to this body. What does bind you to this body? Well, if you look at Sankhya creation, it's the ego. The ego binds you to this body. Remember what separated you in the first place? Ego. And ego keeps you here. But if you can overcome this feeling of asmita, if you can overcome this bondage, you can exist without your body. This is the experience of the yogis. If you can experience without the body and then come back into the body, how grateful are you to be in the body? Because you knew what it was like to be without the body. But most of us don't know what it's like to be without the body. We wake up in the body, we go to sleep in the body, wake up in the body, over and over and over again. We are very fearful of being outside the body. We don't want to lose the body. Abhinavesha. So how can I move myself into a state of calm and peacefulness and disassociate myself from my mind, disassociate myself from my senses, and continue to exist in that space of quietude and peacefulness through the practice of concentration, and meditation? How can I do that? Then how can I go to the other realms, the other dimensions, without my mind, without any imagination, without any sleep, without any correct knowledge or incorrect knowledge? You're transcending all the five chitta vrittis. A samadhi state transcends the five chitta vrittis, transcends everything mentioned in this book. This book is outlining your experience as a human and how to transcend it, to transcend your humanness and realize your divineness. Does that make sense? Otherwise, we're just stuck in the material world or the mental world, back and forth. Material, mental, material, mental, material, mental. We find that the mental world is way bigger than the material world. And so sometimes we get stuck there. Fantasy land, right? And then death comes and we haven't had a chance to work past it. So we don't know what to do. So we get thrusted to the next birth. Thrown in, thrown back in. And then based on what we did, we have to deal with it. Karmic debt. In some way, some fashion. But a yogi, does he talk about it in here? Maybe it's in chapter 4. He talks about that there's black karma and white karma. That like bad and good, right? Or favorable, unfavorable. Or Ramaswamy would say dharmic or adharmic, right? Dharmic is for the good, adharmic is for the not for the good. And then there's gray karma. All of us are making karma. We're making ripples in space-time with our words, our thoughts, and our actions. But a yogi, apparently, according to Patanjali, a yogi can, his or her karma is neither black or white or gray. So, for example, and I don't know that this is true. I can intellectually see it, but it is said that spiritual pursuits don't cause, or this pursuit of enlightenment and self-knowledge doesn't cause these types of karma. And maybe there's something I'm not seeing. Because if you're living in a monastic life and your goal is to seek enlightenment, and you're doing the practices, you're honoring the vows, and I don't know, you step on a bug. I don't know what happens then. Or maybe you did it on accident, but it still causes a ripple in time space. So I can't get my intellectual mind to accept that. That's just me. So there are things like that. 42, he talks about flying, yogic contemplation on the relationship between space and the body, and also by meditating on the flotation of the cotton fiber, like a fiber that floats through the air. A yogi is able to move in space and even float. I don't know. David Williams, we asked David, hey, David Williams, you have a story about levitation? Oh, yeah, I sure do. His story is also a secondhand knowledge story. He said he was in India with his girlfriend, and they were traveling through, and there was a Swami that traveled through the village and wanted to see the Westerners. And one night she was on the roof enjoying the outside. David was downstairs, and the Swami went upstairs and had a talk with the girl and then left. But and then the girl came down and was like, oh my God, the Swami did this thing. He levitated. He laid down and he said, he goes, I want to just show you something to keep you interested on the path of yoga. And he levitated, laid down, like laying down on the ground, and levitated, and then came back down and then left. She was like, what just happened? So, but he didn't see it. And he was like, I have no reason to think that she would lie, but I didn't see it. So he's telling, it's secondhand knowledge. So I'm not going to believe it, but I'm going to tell the story, but I'm going to say, I don't believe it. I don't know that it happened. It could have been a magic trick. I'm not believing it. I'm just not believing it. Does that make sense?
That's what I was going to say. Is it like the prior example where he didn't really levitate? He just appeared to levitate.
Right. So I don't know. And then David Williams made a good comment. He was like, of all the stories that we hear of people levitating, we all have cameras now. How come we have no proof that a yogi can actually levitate? We have nothing. We have no raw footage of any levitation other than magic. And that's not real.
I don't know. I guess I could argue that if the military ever had proof that yogis could meditate, that there'd be a desire to put them away in laboratories and study and try and figure it out.
Yeah, who knows that's probably happened at some point. I don't know, right? You don't know. But the yogis do, and then another story, Gangapuri, he said that he also saw a yogi levitate and stand on like a tree branch. Like he was on the ground. The next thing you know, he was on a tree branch, balancing on a little tree branch. It's like crouching tiger, hidden dragon kind of stuff, right? Like, but that's Gangapuri. He said he saw it. I mean, could he? I don't trust the senses, right? It could be there's a pot. It's a weather balloon or something. I don't know. It's. I have my doubts. I have my doubts, but at the same time, I'm open to it. The possibility of it. I don't know. I mean, I've tried jumping off of houses and flying. It's never really worked out for me. I'm kidding. I'm joking, but I would like to see it. It would be very cool because then I'd like to learn it. Do you remember the documentary with Swami Rambal, the fire yogi? Who saw that with me? I showed it at the retreat. Anybody? There's a fire yogi, Rambal Swami, and he's this like 5'4" little Indian man. He's like 80 something years old, but he looks young. Meditates all day, does pujas, and then he becomes one with fire. He does these fire rituals to like for world peace, and he goes into these trances, and he rolls around in these fire pits and doesn't get burned. Well, his beard gets caught on fire, and he has to put it out one time. But he like gets things of herb and like lights this big thing of dry herb, and he'll wrap it around his body and walk around on fire. And he enters this ecstatic state while he's chanting. And they did these studies on him. They took his blood. He eats 2 bananas and a shot of milk every day, sleeps for 3 hours a day, every single day. Blood was fine. Everything was fine, but he had high cholesterol. But he's like, his body must be making the cholesterol because he wasn't getting it from the outside world. Anyways, so that was the only thing that was weird. So they did studies on him. And at the end, he was like, oh yeah, my next goal, because he hadn't eaten food in like years. He goes, yeah, I stopped eating. He goes, I'm going to stop eating food by this year, and then I'm going to stop drinking by this year, and then I'm going to levitate by this year. I mean, he had it all mapped out. So I think maybe people like that have been studied in one form or another by some military, perhaps. Okay, so moving on. Mastery of the 5 elements, and this is all about cities. On the 44th Sutra, contemplation on gross substances, their characteristics and subtleties, their permeation by the gunas, that they're objects for the self only. Yogis master all these elements. So they talk about yogis being the master of the universe. It's being master of this universe, the universe of me, really, right? All these elements exist within me. Earth, water, air, fire, air, space, all this exists within me. I don't think you can become like an airbender, control air and water, but you can control the air and the water within one's own body. By such mastery, the yogi gets the following: the 8 Buddhi cities, one of which is described here. Yeah. Okay, so let's just move on because I think you can just read that on your own. 51 is a warning. He gives a warning. 50 is the end, and then 51 he adds as a warning here. Let's see here. What does he say? When a yogi is invited to high positions, he must take care to avoid desire and pride. In other words, if you don't get on your high horse, pride and desire are the 2 factors that may bring the yogi down from his pedestal. He gave this warning because it happens. It's so weird. When I hit the scene, so to speak, when I hit the scene, I told some of my good friends, I was like, hey, if you ever see me acting a fool, like my head in the clouds full of ego, please bring me down. Don't let me go. Please, I need help. 52, the yogi should continually, moment by moment, do samyama and discriminate between the self and the intellect, the buddhi. Then the knowledge of the self takes place. This right here, the self and the intellect are like water and milk. Did I tell you about the water and milk analogy? This is it right here. To be able to discriminate between my intellect and the part of me that's observing. Bless you. That right there. So by moment, stay in samadhi, stay in yogic contemplation, and discriminate. Know the difference between who I am and my intellect, the part of me that discriminates. From the knowledge of prakriti, or matter, or nature, it is distinct and pure, indivisible. Yeah, so here he's saying, like, know the difference between prakriti and purusha. Know the difference between prakriti and purusha. $54. It's like, you need to carry this the rest of your life. You got to keep that sharpness of mind to know the difference, moment by moment. The knowledge arising out of the discrimination between prakriti and the purusha is the boat that provides safe passage. You're going to ride the rest of the rest of your journey with this understanding of who I am and who I'm not. The guru is not the boat, it's your own intellect. You know, they say the guru, the role of the teacher, the external teacher, is to point you to the internal teacher. The internal teacher is your conscience and your intellect. So you know the difference. You know the difference. And ideally, nothing will bother you for the rest of your life. But that's in an ideal world, and we know it's very hard to get there. But what if you could reduce or increase your tolerance 50%? Maybe you can't get rid of all things that bother you, but what if you get rid of 50% of it? Is it worth doing? What if it's just 25? Just 25. 1 out of 4 incidences don't bother you anymore, right? Is it worth it? And it just keeps getting better. You go from 25 to 50 to 75 and 90. What if you can exist within the 85, 90 range? I'm telling you, it's possible. I've done it. I've had years of nothing bothered me. But my life was very simple. Okay, it's at 8:30, you guys. I think we did that with one tiny 3-minute break. Please remember what number we're on. I think 53. Oh, yeah. Oh, let's just look at the last one. When the mind becomes purely sattvic without rajas and tamas, ultimately reaches a state of equilibrium of 3 gunas. Okay, so this is a tall order. Our gunas are all over the place. Rajas here, tamas here, sattva there. As a yogi, we want to reduce rajo and tamo guna so that we're highly sattvic. So when you're sattvic, you can do the meditations and concentrate and be clear. But then after a while, what he's saying here is that you're no longer purely sattvic. When the mind becomes purely sattvic and ultimately reaches a state of equilibrium. So you're sattvic first, then you reach a state of equilibrium. Where else have we seen the state of equilibrium? Mula Prakriti. Remember that from the Sankhya earlier, from the diagram? The Mula Prakriti, the root of the universe, wherein the three gunas were in a state of equilibrium. In other words, the highest state of yoga, you get to experience creation of the world, of the universe. You get to go back in time and experience the balance of the balanced state of the three gunas, which is really rare. But that is freedom. So the sattvic state must come down for you to experience the equilibrium. It says it's so hard because you don't know where your gunas are. It's not something that we have like we can measure, like, oh, sattva's high today. You just gotta like reduce it, rajo tamo, become sattvic, and then eventually reduce your sattva, and then you'll be in a state of equilibrium. I can't say I've been there. I can say I've been in a sattvic state, but I don't think I've been in a state of equilibrium. But no, I don't think so. All right, we'll end there. We'll start chapter 4 on the last one, and then review, take questions, have discussion. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhi Tamastuma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi Om Yogena Chitasya Padena Vacham Alam Sharirasya Cha Vaidyakena Yopakarotam Pravaramuni Nam Patanjalim Pranjali Ranatosmi Abahu Purushakaram Shankachakra Siddharanam Sahasrashirisham Shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim Srimate Anantaya Nagarajaya Namo Namaha Namo Namaha Namo Namaha Om. Thanks.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.